Hi, everybody, and welcome to our after party here on Hangouts on Air with a Real Point of View, talking about two really cool films. One is Devil in the Blue Dress, and the latter is Road to Perdition. And our theme for this week was basically who stole the scene. Stealing the scenes in Devil in the Blue Dress was Don Cheadle, and in Road to Perdition was Jude Law. I'm joined here with one of my co-hosts, Karen D, who is the Movie Maven, and we're waiting for another one of our co-hosts, Mr. Larry Domkowski from Must See Movies, to hopefully join us for the latter part of this show here on Hangouts on Air. So until Larry comes into the Hangout with us, just want to share with you our opinions pretty much about these films. Seemed like all three of us liked this film, both films, even though the Road to Perdition was, for all three of us, a little hard to watch for a lot of reasons. It is a very brutal movie. It is a seemingly long movie. At least it felt like it was a long movie. And as you mentioned, Karen, the torrential rain didn't help matters too much. In Road to Perdition. So just to kind of talk about these actors, let's talk about Don Cheadle in Devil in the Blue Dress. Don Cheadle is one of those actors who I think is a superb actor. Although his role is not very large in this film, I think it's very poignant in the film with the way that Denzel Washington's character actually introduces us to his backwoods cousin, Don Cheadle's character, Mouse. So what'd you like about Mouse, Karen? What was it about Mouse that made you think he was viable for this particular movie?
Well, he's just a absolute feast of contradictions. And so that's always interesting to watch. He's brutal. He's violent. But at the same time, he's loyal. I mean, this is a guy who's living like the suburban life to the extent that you can in Houston, Texas. He has a wife, probably kids. The kids weren't mentioned, but he mentioned his wife. So it's like he has this real stable home life in Houston. But then when Easy Rawlins calls him, he drops everything, shoots right up to LA. And, when they part ways, most of the way through the movie, he says, hey, if you need somebody else, if you need me to ride shotgun, just give me a call. I will be there because you keep money in a man's pocket. That's not the exact quote, but it's like you keep money in a man's pants. And that's awesome, It's like, really, dude? And I mean, he just kills without any, sense of, I don't know, remorse at all. It's just, it's like the thing, he does that the way that other people brush their teeth.
Right.
It's very strange to watch, but at the same time, it's like, if he's on your side, he's the one you want on your side because he will be there. He will totally be there, And I love that scene where, he makes himself at home. I mean, he's an affable guy. He comes across as kind of like a nice guy unless you cross him.
Right.
There's this one scene where Easy and Mouse go to, who was it? It's the woman that Easy met in the beginning. I want to say her name is Connie, or I can't remember her name, but it's the first woman who was friends with Daphne, the woman in the blue dress.
Right.
And she ends up dead.
Right.
Easy Rawlins. Of course, Easy Rawlins is definitely a flawed character too, because in the beginning of the movie, they're all drunk, and it's kind of, I'll just call her Connie because I think that's her name. It's Connie, and then her boyfriend and Easy, they're all friends, and Easy helps get her boyfriend home. He's totally snockered. And while he's in a dead sleep in the bedroom, Connie comes on to Easy and he's like, well, yeah, what the heck? And so they make love while her boyfriend's in the next room. Later on.
Hence the name Easy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he was way easy. And then later on, when Mouse and Easy go over to the boyfriend's house, and he's like, oh, she was so loyal and so faithful, and she carried this Bible because she was just this religious woman who she would never look at another man. And he's like bawling, and Easy's like, rah. And Mouse is looking at him like, I think you kind of made out with this woman, didn't you? But I mean, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm thinking there's some hanky-panky going on here that we just don't talk about. It's like, are you kidding me? But meanwhile, Easy just makes himself at home. He's like, hey, did whoever was the housekeeper, I guess, did she make any pig feet or whatever? It's like, yeah, oh, sign me up, let me have some pig feet and let me have some liquor. And oh my goodness. It was very funny.
Yeah, I found Mouse to be, just like you said, a contradictory, but it's funny because everything worked. And he was just like, no matter what happens, I'm in, and I don't have any remorse, because who needs to remorse? I need to be on my game, doing everything I need to do, because I have no qualms. I mean, if anyone's going to feel guilty, it's going to be Easy, because this is your gig. It's not my gig. It's your gig. I'm just here to help.
Right.
So if I shoot somebody, if I strangle somebody, if I knife somebody, that's on you. That's not on me. All I do is, it's all about the money that you can put in my pocket. So whatever you need to get done, if I had a bazooka, I'd shoot it. I mean, it doesn't matter. And here's a guy who, he has his gun, and then he has another gun to use as a persuader.
Right.
That's too funny.
Really, dude?
You want me to kill him, I'll use this gun. But if you want me to just, get him to talk or get him to, I'll use this gun.
Right.
And then he has the nerve to get mad because in the early scene where they're wrestling with this guy and the guy escapes, who they're trying to get this information out of. And after Mouse shoots him in the shoulder, and he gets mad, not because the guy got away. He gets mad because he got blood on my coat.
Yes. This coat costs a lot of money.
This coat costs a lot of money, Easy. Now, where's your bathroom?
Yeah, right.
I just thought he was hilarious in the movie.
He was hilarious.
And
he was hilarious.
This is a drama, basically, and to have that comical element, it was a comical element. It was a serious element. I mean, he just did a really good job in the film, and to not be in the whole movie, and still have so much of an effect in the film, and its outcome is just hilarious. I thought he did a great job.
Yeah. And let me just correct my reference. The girlfriend, the friend of Daphne who ended up dead was Coretta, not Connie. So it was Coretta's boyfriend who was just sobbing because she was so faithful and religious and, just such a God-fearing woman. And it's like, yeah, nah, well, she probably was a God-fearing woman, but not for the reasons you think she was a God-fearing woman. So, but the other thing that I noticed is that it's interesting the way, Mouse says to Easy, well, it's like, I'm your man. If you need somebody, you need a sidekick, I'm your man. But I'm like, I can't really see a situation where Mouse would call Easy and say, hey, I've initiated this thing. I've got this thing going. So come on and help me out. I think it's really the other way around. Easy starts things, Easy initiates things, Easy has these ideas that he wants to implement, and Mouse helps with the implementation. But I don't know that Mouse necessarily has his own ideas, you know. So
yeah, and whatever they are, they keep him in with his wife in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking it's not a whole bunch.
Right. And he's probably, I guess he's like totally faithful to his wife in Houston. I don't know. I mean, he certainly wasn't messing around up in LA, which is, you know, I mean, interesting. Just, you know, many contrasts. And
Mouse is your ride or die guy. That's what he is. And that's all he needs to be, though. Because, like you said, Easy is the one who comes up with the situations and the scenarios where he may need help, because he's not that guy. Not saying that he can't do things. He's a smart guy. He's a strong guy. He has a good character for the most part. But there are those certain things that he knows that will be very difficult for him to do, difficult for him to facilitate without somebody being that backup, that strong backup, that possibly violent backup if necessary, and Mouse is that guy.
Yes.
So very contrasting to the other film in Road to Perdition, where Jude Law's character, he's not a ride or die guy, he's just a die or die guy because he's an assassin. So his very motive is to kill, and he's hired to kill Tom Hanks' character, which is Sullivan. Last name is Sullivan in the film. Michael Sullivan. And he's, because of something that Michael Sullivan's son has seen, they've decided in the gang that Michael Sullivan's a part of, they've decided to get rid of Sullivan's whole family. And they send Jude Law to take care of that. And Jude Law's character, as we spoke to on A Real Point of View on Blog Talk Radio, we were talking about, I made the correlation between Jude Law's character in the movie and to the TV series Dexter. Dexter didn't take prizes like many other serial killers. Dexter's a serial killer in the TV series. He would take blood samples for slides for his microscope, and that's how he would remember the different people that he killed. And that way he could stay under the radar without taking clothing and things of that nature. Here we have Jude Law, an assassin in some cases is somewhat like a serial killer in a way, because they find a way not to have any remorse in the jobs that they do and the killings that they facilitate. And so here we got Jude Law as a photographer, and he takes pictures of the people that he's killed, and he keeps those pictures. So to me, that's very similar to keeping the prize, but not taking any physical thing from the scene other than, in Jude Law's case, the photos, and in Dexter's case, the blood samples. So assassins are very interesting to me to some degree, in them being able to shoot someone without any remorse, and all for the monetary advantage. Now, is that the real reason, money, or is it really they just like killing people and money's just something that they get for it? But Jude Law was really pretty good in this film. And why don't you mention again, Karen, what you thought about Jude Law, and you had mentioned his physical attributes in this film.
Yeah. Well, what I'd said on the Blog Talk portion of our show is that there's a conventional wisdom in the acting world, which is that Americans act from the inside out and Brits act from the outside in. And I think to the extent that's true, I mean, Jude Law is a British actor. And to the extent that that conventional wisdom is true, you can sort of play out in Road to Perdition and the way that Jude Law physicalizes his character. And I was saying some of that was direction because the director, Sam Mendes, I believe is the director of Road to Perdition, and he insisted that Jude Law be paler than everybody else. And he looks very pale in this film. But he also has this really wizened look. I mean, like, it's almost like somebody pulled his face back and so that his features would stick out. And I don't know that anybody did. I don't think anybody did that, but because of the way in which he invoked the physicality, you sort of impose that. And he very much looks, I mean, he looks kind of rat-like to me. And Jude Law is a very handsome man. And no one would ever say, oh yeah, Jude Law, the rat. No, he's a very handsome man. But in that picture, he looks like a rat. And the way that he holds himself, and the way he just sort of, moves, it's, quiet. It's just like a whisper, and he's there. And then, then you don't know where he's come from, and he does whatever he's going to do. He kills, and then he's off again, and you don't know where he's gone. He's furtive. That's the word I'm looking for. He moves very furtively, much like a rat would. So that was interesting. I really think that helped make his performance as visceral as it was, Now,
I remember a scene early in the film where Tom Hanks and his son, it's late at night, and Tom Hanks is going to get something to eat, and he leaves his son in the car, and he's inside the diner. Jude Law comes into the diner, and he's sitting at a table where he's actually facing Tom Hanks, but in the table behind, in the next table over. And just going to what you were saying about the physicality of Jude Law, here's Jude Law's character. He's wearing a hat. He's wearing really dark, kind of brownish clothing, but going to the point where this paleness comes out to the forefront. The way he's sitting in the chair, he's not sitting up in the chair. He's sitting down. He's sitting down very close to either the cup of coffee or whatever the drink was that he had, to almost to the point where the majority of what you see is his face and not the things that he's wearing so much. Like you notice when he walks into the place. So that in itself puts that paleness to the forefront in the camera's eye, because now he's made himself smaller except for his facial feature. And now you see that even more so. So I think there are a few moments like that. There are a lot of leaning moments, moments where he's next to the camera that he has, and the camera's back in that time frame in the 30s and early 40s were rather big size framed cameras. And so therefore he's next to that camera and his head is bigger than the camera. And so when he's looking and he's trying to map out in his mind what he sees and how he wants to capture the picture, that's another one of those moments where he comes to that forefront, that paleness. You can't help but notice it because everything else is brown or dark.
Excuse me. Yes.
So I think the filmmaker, the director, the filmmaker, the cinematographer, they made that aesthetic very important so that you would notice and see this character. When Tom Hanks is trying to get this information from this guy in this hotel, he leaves his son in the car again, and Jude Law knows that he's there and he's coming across the street, and the son tries to warn Tom Hanks that he's coming. You see that it's almost like I would say like a nail. The way that Jude Law's clothing is on him, he's wearing a maxi type coat to hide the shotgun that he has underneath the coat, but his face is so pale. And then he's wearing a white shirt that's a V all the way down. So it almost looks like a nail that you hammered in. And so therefore that paleness comes out again in him going across the street in a hurry. So I agree with you. I think that really brought out a lot of that physical essence that Jude Law possesses in this particular film as the assassin who was hired to take out Hanks and his family.
Well, here's an interesting fun fact. The crime scene photography is actually based on a real crime scene photographer from the 20s and 30s who was called Arthur Weegee Fellig. And that Fellig actually had a scanner radio so that he could get to the crime scenes and photograph the murder victims, and he would get there sometimes before the cops did. And he got a nickname that sort of sounded like Ouija, which is where the Ouija, but it wasn't spelled like Ouija. And he sold his photos to tabloid newspapers, and the production team got some of those crime scene photos and put them in the movie. So some of those crime scene photos that you see in Road to Perdition were actually taken by Arthur Weegee Fellig, the real crime scene photographer. So that was interesting. There's the other thing that I want to point out is that, you have this, you have Jude Law as, basically the scene stealer, but Tom Hanks and Jude Law have very few scenes. There's only really one major scene where they actually talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And that's in the restaurant, right, when Jude Law makes his first really full appearance. Before that, you just see him like getting off a train and, walking with purposes somewhere as if he has an appointment, but you don't really know where he's going, except you kind of ascertain that he must be the hired assassin or whatever. But when they first meet, it's just that one scene. And again, Jude Law does things like he has this small, I think it's a small camera of some kind, mm-hmm, or something, but the way that he puts it down on the table, it looks like a weapon. Right. It reminded me, I thought, I wonder if that's a gun, but it can't be a gun because that would be really weird. And it wasn't a gun. It was some sort of camera or some sort of just device, a small device, but the way that he slammed it down on the table, it sounded like a gun. And the way that he looked at Tom, he just had this way of looking like under his eyes. Right. Up at Tom Hanks, that again, employing these very sinister sort of affectations. But then at the same time, I'm wondering, I'm looking at him and I'm looking at Tom Hanks, and Tom Hanks says, oh yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. And I better go to the little boys' room or whatever. And somehow along the way, he's figured out that Jude Law is not whoever he's pretending to be, and that there's right, something wrong here and he needs to get out. And I'm sitting there going, how did he figure that out though? How did he know? I think it's just by the conversation itself. I think as the questions were going back and forth between the two gentlemen, it started to get less and less, I don't want to say familiar. It got less and less, for lack of a better way of saying it, just fun fact finding. It got to the point where now things seem to be said in innuendo. Mm-hmm. Subtext. Subtext. And I think that started to make Tom Hanks feel a little uncomfortable. And it got to the point where already he knows that he's kind of running away from a situation, knowing that, and now he's thinking, well, okay, this guy doesn't sound quite right. And I'm not going to sit here and wait to see if he does something crazy. I'm getting out of here. And if I'm wrong, then fine. But if I'm right, I'm fine. I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. And of course, we know that he was right, because then Jude Law realizes that he's gone and starts trying to shoot him as he leaves. Right. So now he knows this guy's after him, and it's on from then on out. And I felt like there were some like overtures to The Godfather, kind of, because you've got Daniel Craig playing this really, he reminded me of Fredo. Fredo was weak and stupid. So you had Daniel Craig, who's stealing with impunity from his own dad. It's like, why is he stealing from his father? It's not like there's not enough money to go around, but he's stealing. And then he blames it on the dead gangsters that he goes to kill. And at one point, Tom Hanks is like, I was helping him kill people that we accused of stealing who never stole anything.
Right.
What up with that? You know, and Daniel Craig, you know, is just like completely, I mean, with Jude Law, you sort of knew, you know, he was the assassin and he was doing what assassins were supposed to do. Daniel Craig, at the beginning of the movie, when the kid sees well, actually, that wasn't even supposed to be a killing. That was just supposed to be like a little chat that went horribly wrong.
Right.
Because Daniel Craig got totally cuckoo and shot him on impulse. And, you know, if you're a contract killer, none of this is supposed to be emotional. You're not supposed to shoot somebody because you get mad or you get like janky or, you know, hepped up or whatever. These are supposed to be deliberate actions. So he totally violated like the Assassin's Code, if there is one. And, you know, and then when he sees that Tom Hanks' kid or Michael Sullivan's kid saw what was happening, then he says, oh, well, you know, well, will he be okay? And Michael Sullivan says, well, you know, I've talked to him. He's my son. He'll be fine. He won't say anything to anybody. And Daniel Craig's like, oh, that's great. Okay, awesome. You know, take care. Mm-hmm. All the while planning to off them all. And it's actually Daniel Craig who goes and he's the one who initiates the killing of Michael Sullivan's family. He's the one who goes in to Michael Sullivan's house. Michael Sullivan wasn't there. I guess he was out on a job. His oldest son wasn't there, or he would have been killed. But his wife and youngest son were there, and Daniel Craig's character comes in and kills them. Mm-hmm. Connor comes in and just kills them in cold blood for no good reason. They didn't even know what had happened. Neither one of, well, I think the youngest son kind of, you know, was wondering what his dad did for a living. But the wife, right. If the wife knew, you know, she wasn't saying anything. But he killed them again for no good reason because he's weak and stupid. I love that scene where Tom Hanks' character, Michael Sullivan, confronts Rooney, who's played by Paul Newman. And again, I think another tip of the hat because this is Paul Newman's last film appearance before he passes away. Right. And he's wonderful in this film, but I can't really think of any film where he wasn't wonderful. And Paul Newman he brings grace to pretty much everything. I mean, with the potential exception of For the Love of Money, which is a complete waste of celluloid, if you ask me. That was ridiculous. And he never should have won the Academy Award for that. That was like offensive. But, you know, he should have won for The Verdict. That's what he should have won for. But because he didn't win for that, they gave it to him for the Love of Money. But The Road to Perdition, I mean, he's this steely-eyed, you know, Irish mobster, but he's trying to sort of mediate the violence, because you've got Daniel Craig who goes off half-cocked, kind of like Sonny Corleone did in The Godfather. You know, well, you couldn't really talk to him.
You got to know when you're seeing a lot of these crime films, the one thing that's the constant is the father figure, the good son, the bad son, and in this movie, the good son, even though he wasn't really his son, is Michael Sullivan. And then the bad son, of course, is his own son. And part of the reason that he's crazy is, other than his normal craziness, is the fact that, and you see it early on in the very beginning at the funeral that they're having that at the house at the wake that they're having at Rooney's house, is the jealousy that Daniel Craig's character, the son, has for Michael Sullivan. I mean, here's Michael Sullivan, who's not the son, but he's playing the piano with his father. Here's the situation where they send Michael Sullivan sends his son upstairs. Well, actually, Rooney, after he's playing craps with Sullivan's two kids, sends Michael, young Michael, which is the son, upstairs to get some money out of his coat. When he gets up there, the son is up there. Rooney's son is up there, and he tells the kid, "You might as well call me uncle." And so he says, "Well, I was sent up here to get something out of the coat." And he says, "No, don't worry about that. Come back later," because he doesn't want you to have an advantage. He doesn't like you, really. And then downstairs, when the piano playing is done, Rooney's son is just smiling. And so Sullivan's youngest son says, "Why is it every time I see you, you're smiling?"
Mm-hmm.
So now we know, and I can't remember what the answer was, but it was a messed up answer. Especially to a little kid.
Totally messed up.
The little kid who was like 8 years old. And, you see the early part of it then is like, this is wonderful. This is great. You're stealing my dad again from me now. And probably in the early past when they were younger, because again, Sullivan's not the kin, but the father always treated him as such.
Right.
And so who has the favor? Sullivan does, not Rooney.
But
and
at
we see
one
that
point,
all the time in all these movies.
Right. But at one point, Connor Rooney is talking to, I think it was Stanley Tucci's character, where he says, "I'm the future of this family. So you better pay me respect. Basically, you better understand where, I'm giving you orders, and you better, Stanley Tucci's like, 'Are you kidding me? Get out of here. You're such a punk. Go away. Be gone with you.'" But what I was going to say was I love that scene between Paul Newman and Tom Hanks, their respective characters, where Michael Sullivan basically brings the proof that Connor Rooney was embezzling like crazy and blaming it on everybody, and that they were killing all the wrong people for no good reason. And Rooney was like, "Well, I know what he was doing. I know." And it's like, what? Yeah, I know that, but I've been trying to protect you, but I really don't, but I really have to protect him, because it's like, that's where it's like, okay, yes, I've treated you like a son,
right?
But he is my son.
Exactly.
So, I mean, if harm comes to you, I'm going to be really sad, but I really can't let any harm come to my actual flesh and blood.
Exactly.
You're more expendable.
But that's the formula in a lot of these crime-based family / mobster movies, and this one formula that continues to reoccur at every peak and valley in these different films. And it is a story that we see over and over again, but somehow some directors and some good writers have made it still interesting to watch and get us to buy into the situation and the scenarios that they present. So here it is again, and I enjoyed it in this one. I enjoyed it in The Godfather. I enjoyed it in Goodfellas. And I can go on and on and on. Right. But at the same time, it's interesting because we see correlations between these films, and yet there's enough uniqueness in the writing and that we can see differences. Now, here's something I thought was interesting that I don't know if anybody really paid that much attention, but I noticed this look, not quite a bowler, but Jude Law wears like a bowler type hat, and so does Mouse.
No, I didn't notice that.
And so I'm thinking, wait a minute, these like-minded guys wear like-minded clothes. I mean, Michael Sullivan has almost like this, very similar to the fedora kind of, the movie noir type of hat, but not Jude Law. His hat is different. And then
it is a bowler.
And then when you look at Mouse, he's wearing this boa because it's fashionable, and yet very different than any other cooks. Like you were saying, Sizemore, he too is wearing one of those, movie noir type of hats, and the cool kind of hat, but not Mouse. Mouse is both these guys definitely dance to the beat of a different drummer.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was interesting. I'm like, even they're wearing, and I, picking them at random for this kind of film and this scenario in the film, and yet at the same time, there's so many correlations between these guys. It's funny.
Right.
It's just funny.
Right. Oh, the other thing that I want to point out too is that moment early on during the wake when Rooney and Sullivan sat down at the piano and played this lovely little sort of lullaby together. Paul Newman and Tom Hanks actually did play that during the movie. They're not piano players, but they practiced a lot and actually did that in the movie. So there was no like sort of like a stunt
Pretend
player.
hands. Right.
Or like a Yanti Solomon in the background really playing, and they're just sort of like, none of that. They actually played that piece. And it was very well done.
Like the shoulders moving, and like I'm playing the piano right now.
Right. Yeah, none of that.
And I'm really good compared to what I'm doing right now. I'm a virtuoso here.
Oh, wow.
And then
you always think you're a virtuoso.
But here's the funny thing: the shoulders are going like this, but yet when you see the hands, they look very calm. And so, they couldn't be those same kind of movements because it's so very different. But yeah, I noticed in the film,
Right.
Even watching the film, I could tell it was them, and that's the cool part. That's good film photography, cinematography there too, that you can actually see it's really them playing, and that it adds to the smiles and then the reception they got after they were through playing. It was really good.
It was a very sweet moment in a very sad, tragic, sinister film. So there you go.
For a film that was supposed to be sad and sinister, it worked because it was supposed to be sad and sinister, and it was.
It was. Yes, it was. Yes,
and
it was.
In the difference in Devil in the Blue Dress, which was supposed to be kind of a smoky kind of movie, film noir, kind of smoky, kind of cool, kind of, slipping through the shadows. It was that. It was
right.
That. And
it just reminded you of the soundtrack really conveyed that. I love the soundtrack to this movie. It's one of my most favorite soundtracks of all the movies that I've ever seen. It's just so well done. Elmer Bernstein wrote a lot of the music for this movie. I think the soundtrack was nominated for an Academy Award. If not, it certainly should have been. And then there were a lot of jazz classics brought in, like Thelonious Monk and other jazz greats brought in to round out the soundtrack, and it was just so well done. Love it.
It was, if I must say, it was a smooth movie, which plays into the jazz essence of the time and the music that was played during the film. It was very smooth, and so having a name like Easy just goes along with the realms of the film. So, and Crazy Mouse, and I just enjoyed the movie. So I thought this might be a kind of an interesting assignment for us this week.
And here's something else: that movie is 20 years old.
I know.
I was, when I usually check to see when these movies come out, just, as a matter of course. And I was blown away. It's like, this movie is 20 years old. Really? Oh my goodness.
I must admit, both actors talking about Denzel Washington and Don Cheadle, they still look pretty good for that being 20 years ago. And still very stellar performances that you get in the films from both of these guys.
Oh,
I am
yes.
very much a fan of them both. Um,
Hmm.
and not just dramatic works, but whimsical work, especially in Don Cheadle's case. He did all those movies with George Clooney in the what was those the series movies when they're in Vegas, the Las Vegas movies, 11,
Oh, you
12,
mean
Oceans, the ocean
Ocean's
movies.
11?
The ocean movies, and Don Cheadle has a British accent in the movies, and it's just funny because they're the whole essence of all the different people that are involved. It was just a whimsical scenario, and Don Cheadle fits right in. And then
Hmm.
um, Don Cheadle, then other performances like Hotel Rwanda, were very different, very dramatic, um, very well acted role in that
Hmm.
film, that biopic. So um, just a stellar actor in Don Cheadle and decent dancer. We found that out too. Um,
How do we find that out?
he was in one of the movies that depicted the Rat Pack. It's Frank Sinatra. He plays the character of oh my God, Sammy Davis Jr. You didn't
Oh,
see
he
that one. You
played.
didn't see that one.
Wait, in one of the Ocean's 11 movies
No,
with
I'm going.
Matt
I'm
Damon?
going away from the Ocean's 11 movies, and I'm talking about the
Okay.
Rat Pack. Saying I'm just talking about his versatility as an actor. So I was going to another film that he was in
Mhm.
where he is actually depicting Sammy Davis Jr. and they're talking about the Rat Pack. So it's basically the Rat Pack is Sammy Davis Jr. But it's Frank Sinatra and his friends,
And Joey Bishop
Joey
and Dean Martin.
Bishop.
But what movie was this
I
where
don't
Don
remember
Cheadle
the I
was
don't
dancing?
remember the name of the film. I have to.
Oh, because I would like to check that out.
Yeah, we just have to bring that one up. Hold on a second. I'll see if I can find that.
Well, the what I will mention while you're doing that is, um, you said that Don Cheadle and Denzel Washington look pretty good. They look very good. Don Cheadle is
Yeah,
50 and
yeah,
Denzel Washington is 60.
yeah.
And actually is 61, really. He's not 60, 61. Because I believe he's a Capricorn. So um, yeah, he was born in 1954, so he'll be 61 at the end of this year.
Wow.
Um, and Don Cheadle was born in 1964 and at the end of November. So yeah, so I mean. But you still, I mean, Denzel Washington can still carry the lead in a box office.
Hmm.
He still is a box office lead. I think he's stepping back from that more. I mean, when was the last time he carried a movie was The Equalizer, I think.
Right.
Um,
But
and it
there's
was
I
it.
actually liked him
I
in that.
mean,
He wasn't bad in that.
yeah, I liked him in it too, but instead of like coming out with 2 or 3 movies a year, it's like a movie or so every 2 or 3 years
Right.
kind of thing. I guess The Equalizer 2 is being made, and and he's also supposed to be in The Magnificent Seven, which opens up next year. Um, but I think for Denzel Washington, to me, one of the best roles that he ever had, where I think he should have won an Academy Award, was in Flight, where he played Whip Whitaker, the pilot.
The pilot. Hmm.
That movie,
Oh,
and
I found the movie by the way.
oh, what's that?
The one with Don Cheadle where he plays Sammy Davis Jr.
Yes.
The name of the movie is The Rat Pack.
Oh, it was a made for cable movie, wasn't it? Was it
Yeah,
like a made for HBO or?
yeah, 1989. It was a TV movie, correct?
But what does it say? What TV station was it? Was it cable or was it? I
Where
want to
I'm
say it's
looking,
cable.
I decided to go into IMDb, and it's not really telling me.
Oh, okay.
But it just
I
says
think I think
it
I've
was made for
seen that movie.
television.
I think I've seen that movie.
Yeah, it wasn't
Don
bad.
Cheadle was really good as Sammy Davis Jr.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It
Yeah,
wasn't
I
bad.
really like that movie. Now here I have a question to pose to
Sure.
you, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Gregory. Why, given the Devil in a Blue Dress story and the way in which it ended, you would think there would have been another Walter Mosley book made into a movie, because I mean there's Walter Mosley's written lots of books with the character Easy Rollins, and yet only this one movie has been made. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. One of the things that comes to mind for me is funding. Might not have, and I don't know. You know, it's funny about movies. Sometimes when movies come out at a certain time, how it's perceived at the time. I don't know if this was a big box office type film, although it is a very good movie. I don't know if it got a lot of publicity. I didn't really hear a lot about it when it first came out because I saw it when it first came out,
So did
and
I.
yeah, and I don't think it got a lot of buzz at the time, and that's enough right there to kill a sequel. Yet, ironically, excuse me, sorry about that. I had to sneeze. Excuse me. Ironically, a lot of other movies. I am so sorry, everybody. A lot of other movies that I think have less credibility seem to be able to get sequels made all the time. I don't know why that is.
Right.
The other thing is, we also have to look at the actors themselves. What projects are they working on at the time? This is one of those times where Denzel Washington is starting to get better roles, better projects,
In
and maybe
95,
that's one of the reasons why they just didn't pursue it at the time. But that is a very good question. That would be something to look into a little more in more detail to see if we can come up with an answer for that. But I like the character, but just like anything else, it just depends. There's a character which goes along with our possible theme for next week in Tom Cruise's character in this movie called Jack Reacher, which is based off of the novel by Lee Childs, and where we have this character who in the book realm is a series that has more than 10 books. So I think it just depends on partially how it's being perceived, or I should say received by the viewing audience. Another is, do the actors who are in this particular film, are they able or willing to make a sequel?
Right.
There's so many other factors that we know that Hollywood has that may prevent a sequel from being made. But I think Jack Reacher, for example, in that particular film, which has not just Tom Cruise, but it also has
Is Hugh Jackman in that movie?
no,
No. Okay.
but we're going to discuss that later. But no, David Oyelowo is in this film, and so
David Oyelowo. Okay.
right is in this film, and so it just depends on can they build this character into the next phase. Another movie that was based off of a book, which on the opposite end of things had three different films from the book, which is James Patterson's books, where Alex Cross is the main character. and we've seen two particular actors play the role. We've seen Morgan Freeman in two films, Along Came the Spider and
Kiss the Girls.
Kiss the Girls, and then Tyler Perry taking on the movie Alex Cross. And all three films, Alex Cross is the main character, and these are the this is the primary character in the series of Alex Cross detective series that James Patterson has written. So it just depends. Michael Connelly too is trying to get his character, which is onto the screen. He was the one who had done the Lincoln Lawyer, and there's a series of three characters in that series that he interchanges back and forth, and he actually took one of those characters and made a TV series out of it, and that's been on Netflix, which is Harry Bosch, which is actually Bosch, I think, is the name of the TV series. So, it just depends on what you can do. In the Lincoln Lawyer, we see Michael McConaughey plays Mickey. I can't think of the last name right now.
Matthew McConaughey?
Matthew McConaughey plays
I'm
Mickey.
sorry, I thought you were talking about somebody else.
I may have said it wrong. I apologize. Matthew McConaughey. It's Matthew, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it's Matthew McConaughey.
Matthew McConaughey plays Mickey in the Lincoln Lawyer, and he is a person that is a part of Michael Connelly's series of stories about this particular lawyer. And I thought that was such a good movie. But then again, whatever projects that Matthew McConaughey took on, I don't think they could have made a series out of it, even though I think they probably could have. But I think, when you have actors do such a good job, and if they're not available, you don't want to just put anyone in that situation. Yeah.
Well, I was looking at, what the filmography, Denzel Washington's filmography, and in '95, he was spending a lot of time. He had a lot going on because he not only made Devil in a Blue Dress in 1995, he also made Crimson Tide, again, like a tour de force for his character. He was the star of that movie, and he was playing against Gene Hackman. One of my favorite movies. Love that movie.
I do too.
And then he also did Virtuosity, which is a movie that doesn't get talked about a lot, but was a really interesting crime drama. And I think actually, right, and this film could have been like one of our scene stealers too. That could have qualified as a scene stealer type film. But he did that film, and then in '96 he did The Preacher's Wife and Courage Under Fire. And then he took a break a little bit. Then he came right back in '98 with The Siege. He got Game and Fallen. So 3 movies made in a year. And then The Hurricane and The Bone Collector in '99. So yeah, I
like most of those movies too.
Right. And I guess retrospectively, if you really wanted to do a sequel for Devil in a Blue Dress, it would be sooner rather than later. And I don't know where they would have fit that in, given what he was doing
exactly
for over the next 5 years. Because at that time he's at the top of his game, and he's made several movies that, warranted Academy Award talk, if not nomination, if not award, well before Training Day.
Yeah, I honestly, I think they gave it to him for Training Day, but
you should have gotten it for Malcolm X. But I'll always say that. And that was 1992 when he made that movie.
I will too.
That's where, but he should have gotten it for that.
It's rare. It's very rare, if at all, that you get a bad performance out of Denzel Washington in these films. Although I did not like Fallen, I just couldn't get into the film. But all the aforementioned films I really liked, and liked Denzel Washington in them. Now here's the thing: Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington in Virtuosity, they meet up again in American Gangster.
Mm-hmm.
So the combination of the two actors involved. So,
Right.
uh,
And I will say, for my part, I think Denzel Washington has been in some not great movies. I think I agree with you. I mean, I can't think of a time when he gave like a really like a bad performance, or, I came away from the movie going, God, Denzel Washington was just so awful in that movie. I've never said that, but there have been movies where like, gee, I wish he hadn't picked that movie to be in,
a movie that some people like that I didn't like that
which is
much. Um, was it John? Was it
John Q.
John Q? Wasn't a great movie for me. And I really like Denzel Washington, and I like Kimberly Elise a lot, but that movie just
Hmm.
didn't do it for me. And then Fallen was bizarre, too bizarre for me. Not that I don't like
Hmm.
bizarre movies, but it was just too bizarre, and I just never could get into the essence of the film. Now, Denzel Washington and other films, they films that weren't all that great. Yeah, that happens, but he doesn't do a bad job in them. It's just the film.
Right.
I think he's always up to task, and that's good for the film because that's going to get people to see the film. But as far as the films being great, then for me, those two are two of the weaker films. Now, a film that I really liked, which was a remake, and I'm not a big fan of remakes. Um,
Hmm.
the remake that I like was the one where Denzel Washington character is protecting Dakota Fanning's character in what is the name of
But Out of Time?
no,
No.
no, something Fire.
Man on Fire.
Man on Fire. Now, Man on
You
Fire
like
is a
that
remake.
movie?
I did. I liked him in it.
Oh.
Um, but it's a remake. I liked it better than the original movie, even though the irony is the actor who played the same character in the original movie I also like, which is Scott Glenn. Scott Glenn and Denzel Washington played the same character. Scott Glenn was in the
Right.
original film, so it was a better movie than the original movie.
Hmm.
And
And for me, I guess I could easily have skipped. There's a movie that I didn't particularly like that he was in that has has gotten a great deal of acclaim, but I didn't care for it, and that was Philadelphia.
I liked Philadelphia, but all the buzz
I didn't.
that was out there for the film, it didn't really, and that's what messes up films sometimes, too much hype. Um, it got a lot of publicity because of the subject matter.
Right.
And the fact that prior to the film, everybody knew that Tom Hanks had done a lot of physical. Um, uh, it was a very physically challenging film for Tom Hanks with the
Right.
weight loss and everything. So, the three actors, Antonio Banderas, Tom Hanks, and Denzel Washington, it was a good film in that regard, but it wasn't a great film like everyone's saying it was. I think
Well,
it was a subject matter what just made the film important, we'll say, not such a great film.
maybe it was an important film, but the approach was so milk toasty, in my opinion. The way in which it approached the subject of AIDS and HIV, there were just so many unrealistic aspects to the plot and the characterizations, and it was like, and I think this movie was directed by Jonathan Demme. There was great effort made to not give offense, and that to me ruined the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you take on a subject matter as messy as death and dying, and as awful as AIDS and HIV, and at that point, I mean, at this point in time in the 2010s, having HIV is not necessarily a death sentence. Not in this country. In some countries it is, but not so much in this country. In 1993, it was absolutely a death sentence.
Right.
And the time in which that movie was portraying, like the late 80s, it was absolutely totally a death sentence. So that's kind of what, but there was still all of this effort to make it seem nice and sympathetic and, not just completely, I don't know, I just keep going back to the word sympathetic and inoffensive, made the movie offensive to me. Mm-hmm. Because even though you don't have much of a historical perspective on AIDS in 1993, you do have an understanding on how to really say something meaningful about what's going on. And this movie missed on a lot of those points. So I did not like the movie, even though it, like I said, it got a lot of acclaim. Another movie where I think, the other thing was another movie where we were saying that Denzel Washington never does a bad job, but I can pick one movie where he didn't do quite so well, and that was Much Ado About Nothing. He played Don Pedro, and he's a very good actor, but he's not a Shakespearean actor. He's just not.
Okay, sorry. I said, and maybe I don't know if I said this exactly, but I found a movie in my mind just now that I thought was not a very good movie, and he was just okay in it. And that's the Book of Eli. Book of Eli. Mm-hmm. See, I didn't remember the name because I didn't like the movie so bad that I couldn't remember the name. But that was such a bad movie. I didn't like that movie at all. And then when you get to the end, it just culminates in really how bad the movie was. And so yeah, that's probably for me the worst Denzel Washington movie that I've seen, where he didn't do that great in it, and because he was in it, didn't help the film at all.
Right.
Now, what we're gonna talk about Denzel, then we'll go to Don Cheadle, then we'll go to Jude Law, Tom Hanks. But what was your favorite two Denzel Washington movies? And I'm gonna do it like this. Aside from Malcolm X.
Aside from Malcolm X?
Yeah, give me two good Denzel Washington movies that you really liked.
That I really, really, really liked?
Yes.
Mississippi Masala.
Okay.
Is my favorite movie. I adore that movie. Love, love, love that movie. 1991. He plays, he's like a carpet cleaner in the South, and he meets up with this woman who's Indian, and her family's emigrated to America, and they meet up and they fall in love, much to the consternation of her Indian family, and actually his family's not too crazy about this either. And so, the question is, does true love triumph, or is there true love? I love this movie. It tackled so many taboos in such a beautifully done way. There was comedy. I mean, it's basically a romantic comedy, and it was very well done. Mira Nair was the director and the writer, I believe, of this movie, and she just did an amazing job. And it's one of my all-time favorite movies. So that's one.
Okay.
And you said I couldn't pick Malcolm X.
No.
Then the one that I think I would keep going back to is Crimson Tide.
That is such a good movie.
Love that movie.
That is a good movie. That's a great movie.
It's just, there's something, and this is just personal. It has nothing to do with the genre as such, but I've always, ever since I was a kid, I like swashbuckling movies. I like movies with pomp and circumstance. I like movies with uniforms. Like I still love to watch A Few Good Men.
Oh, so do I.
You go, you know the truth. I still love seeing that, That's
still one of my favorite all-time movies.
I love that movie, and I love what is the movie? The Cane Mutiny. Again,
I love that too. That's the Navy again.
Right, these movies about the military and sort of the place of the military in the world, and the military ethics versus civil ethics, and just all of those questions. I love that. And the Crimson Tide, it's like all of these men who, you know, pull together for this one goal. They have a common goal, which is to keep America safe against, you know, the threat of the Russians or the threat of whoever. But then you've got, you know, Gene Hackman, who ostensibly has the same goal, but is he cuckoo with the same goal, or is he crazy like a fox? Who knows? You know, just very interesting. And there's almost like a dance between Gene Hackman's character and Denzel Washington's character that is just so delicious to watch. So delicious. So yes, that would be my second movie.
Okay, those are good ones. Love Crimson Tide.
Yeah, no, what about you? What are your two? And you can't pick Malcolm X.
I'm not going to pick Malcolm X, and I'm not going to pick Crimson Tide, because those are some big ones for me. My first one would probably be Glory.
Oh,
I love Denzel Washington.
I always called it Glory.
It was gory. Anything about our history like that is pretty gory. But at the same time, just the acting itself, I just thought Denzel Washington did a superb job in Glory.
He was nominated for an Academy Award for that, as Best Supporting Actor.
Exactly.
For his role there. And
another Denzel Washington movie that I thought was really, really good. Gotta think about that for a second. This is kind of an early movie for him, and I liked the movie. I don't know why, because it's kind of a quirky movie to me. But I liked him in Ricochet. A little earlier movie for him, but it gave me the understanding that he was going to be a really good actor, because I could see the remnants of it then, and it made me interested in him to find out who is this guy. So, you know,
the movie those are now Ricochet. I think I really liked that movie because that movie. That was with John Lithgow. Yes.
Yeah. Crazy.
And Ice-T. John Lithgow was completely wackadoo in that movie.
Crazy.
Oh my goodness.
But Denzel Washington stood up to the craziness and the torture and all the craziness in that film. So
yeah, that was great. That was a crazy movie and very good movie.
Yeah, quirky.
Nice.
Quirky,
yeah,
good.
I thought it was good. I really liked it.
Yeah. I'm not saying it was bad. It was just quirky. So
it is quirky.
Yeah.
But so my honorable mention, I could just say before we move on, I have an honorable mention. I'm sorry, because I forgot about this one. This is what tipped me off to being a good actor long before Ricochet. A Soldier's Story.
Oh.
1984.
Yes.
1984. So that we're 31 years ago now.
I did not know it was him, and I usually catch that stuff, and it just didn't. I didn't listen, and when I saw the movie again, I realized, and I tried to pay more attention. I realized that I wasn't listening to all the clues that was making it seem more and more like him as the villain. And I didn't listen to the early clues. And of course, later in the film, as they get close to the end, you find out, you know, it's him because of things that are being said. But early on, I wasn't paying attention to the clues, not the clues about the sergeant, but the clues about how he was treating the other soldiers. That was what we needed to see. Him making fun of the hillbilly soldier, him talking about all these things. He was the radical the whole time. And had I been paying attention, because, you know, I'm looking at, well, who had the real the real motive for killing the sergeant. All of them did.
Oh yeah,
But there was one in particular who was more outspoken about the craziness, and I wasn't paying attention because he was not the person I suspected.
Right.
And
Yes.
that was purposeful, I'm sure. But I usually catch that stuff usually. But yeah, that was a really good movie. That was a good movie for pretty much all the actors in that film.
Howard Rollins put him on the map. Well deserved. Adolph Caesar.
Yeah.
Was nominated for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, and he died not too long after that.
Yeah.
So I wish he had won. That would have been awesome. But it was pretty amazing that they even noticed his performance enough to nominate him, that the Academy did, given that it was the Academy, and still is. But it was also nominated for Best Screenplay Motion Picture for the Golden Globes, and nominated for Best Picture.
Okay, let's get off of Denzel Washington for a minute and go back to the subject of our theme. Let's talk about Don Cheadle. What's the two best films of Don Cheadle's that you like?
Oh wow. Okay, are there any restrictions on what I can name?
No, not in this one. No.
Okay. Well, one of my favorite Don Cheadle movies is Crash.
Very good movie. I think he was actually one of the producers of that film, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
Very good movie.
He was very good, and yes, he's somebody who really has been very good about sort of diversifying his impact in the movie business. I mean, he's diversifying so that, I guess he wants to get his hand into as many pots as possible. Maybe he's just, kind of a Renaissance man in that regard. Mm-hmm. But, I love the fact that he's behind the camera and in front of the camera. Mm-hmm. He's at the table, table reads, and he's, doing these different characters. So that's definitely one movie that I would pick. And I love the story of Crash. It's one of my favorite movies. And I just and his part was, I don't think his part was huge in that movie, but it was definitely memorable. Mm-hmm. The other movie that I really like of his, Traffic.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yes, where he played. Yes, it was. This is a really well done movie about the drug wars. Michael Douglas, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Don Cheadle, Luis Guzman, who to me is one of the most underrated and finest actors of our time. He's an amazing actor. I love Luis Guzman. Luis Guzman was Don Cheadle's partner. They were both cops, and they were part of this movie, and they were chasing after different drug dealers, the elusive Colombians, the elusive Mexicans, or whoever, whatever they were chasing. They were all elusive. But Don Cheadle was really, he was really good in that, he's playing this cop who's doing this very dangerous job, and he's, really cynical and cryptic about what he's doing, but at the same time, he still cares enough to not just give up. He keeps trying. Mm-hmm. And, that struggle was really interesting to watch. I think he did a very good job of portraying that. So those are my two. What you got?
Well, I've got one a little earlier than that. After Devil in the Blue Dress, I liked him in this made-for-TV movie called Rebound: The Legend of Earl the Goat Manigault. And this is a movie that's a biopic about this playground legend in basketball who was short but could dunk. And it's a really, really good film. And he was friends because he went to school around the same time as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and they actually knew each other. And they go back to these legends of these playground situations to keep kids out of trouble, and they go back to these in history, and the people always say that the person that they remember the most was him, Earl the Goat. And a lot of NBA players say, yeah, they remember the GOAT. And he was the guy who never played in the NBA, never played in college.
Wow.
And then another movie, which reminds me of Mouse, and that's just because it's Don Cheadle, with a little bit more authority in this film. It's not a big, well-known film, but this is one of those films that he actually did with George Clooney. And this is George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez in Out of Sight.
Huh. Now, when was that done?
1998.
Oh. Interesting.
And we're talking about Don Cheadle at his most gangsterous. He's a petty gangster, petty thug, thief, and just thinks he's all that in this film, and it's hilarious. But I think he does really good, and he's very menacing in this film.
Nice.
But it's a really interesting film, and it's got some pretty decent people in it. As I alluded to, George Clooney, Jennifer Lopez, Vin Rings is in the movie.
Right.
So you're getting a lot of the people who end up in a lot of these movies, like the George Clooney movies or the Tom Cruise movies, with some of these characters and people that are in it. Dennis Farina's in it. I mean, this is a movie that sparked a TV series. Dennis Farina plays Marshall Sisko in this film, and Jennifer Lopez plays his daughter, Karen Sisko. And this ended up being a TV series called Karen Sisko. And Karen Sisko's character is a U.S. Marshal out to get her criminal in this film, which is Jack Foley, which happens to be George Clooney. And
wow.
Yeah, and then the TV series was actually pretty good. Came out not too long after the film, and I think it lasted 2 years maybe. But it was an interesting scenario, and I actually remember watching the TV series. So when I found out about the movie, I wanted to see the movie, and sure enough, it's the same character, and it's the same premise.
Wow.
So that was an early George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez film there, and Don Cheadle and Vin Rings. So yep, those are the kind of those two films I really like of Don Cheadle. I mean, I liked him in Rosewood, which was a very hard movie to watch. Didn't have such a big role in Boogie Nights or anything like that, but it was okay. But those were the two that I really liked the most. Now, of course, he took over for Don Cheadle took over for
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard, thank you, in the Iron Man films, and so he's going to be in the Avenger movies also, and Captain America: Civil War, which is all Marvel comic books, as Iron Man's sidekick, Colonel James Rhodes. So.
Right, and in that shift, I mean, I'm sure. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what was behind that. Although I hear that difficulties in dealing with Terrence Howard sort of precipitated that change. I don't know if that's true or not, but that Don Cheadle's role in those movies, I don't think serves him that well. In that particular instance, I think there's a lot more chemistry to me between Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr. in the Iron Man movies than there was between Don Cheadle and Robert Downey Jr. And it's like, and I'm sorry, it's like the whole situation was unrealistic anyway, because you've got this guy who, looks like maybe, like 40s, who's like this like 4-star general. I'm like, really? I don't think so. And, so it's like, why does he have to be a general? And then they're supposed to be best friends because Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Iron Man, is this big basically a huge defense contractor. He's basically floating the Pentagon. So, okay, fine. So they're really good friends. But I didn't get friendship between them. And there's just more of a bromance, I thought, in the first Iron Man between Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr. And it was just a lot more believable.
I agree. But they had Terrence Howard on Sway's radio show, and they also had Don Cheadle, and they both pretty much agreed as to what the situation. It had to do with money, but it had to do with what was promised, according to oh my God, I can't think of his name. Help me out here. Empire.
I don't know where you're going.
Not Don Cheadle, Terrence Howard. Thank you. I had to get the Terrence Howard back in my head. Terrence Howard stated that it did have to do with money, but it had to do with money that was promised him. And when they decided to do the sequel, they lessened the money. That was the studios. And so he felt that he wasn't being represented well in that situation. So he declined to do the movies because it was, I think, almost $5 million less. And so he said, well, I was promised this much to do the series. And so going into the next film, he was supposed to get more, and they wanted him to take a fifth of the money. So he decided, well, he just wasn't going to do that. And so they offered it to Don Cheadle, and he took it. But he and Don Cheadle are friends, and they talked about the situation, and they had said that, there was no animosity, nothing weird going on between them. They were actually said that Don Cheadle said that Terrence Howard said, hey, man, you should do it. And Sway had Terrence Howard and Don Cheadle on at different times. And when Sway played the interview to Terrence Howard, and it pretty much coincided with what both of them had said.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
But I agree with the chemistry between Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr. was really good. And I thought, wow, this is great. And I would look forward to seeing Terrence Howard in the next film, and I was disappointed. I mean, I love Don Cheadle, but I don't think he was, I agree with you. I don't think his characterization was as good. It definitely did not feel the bromance in that relationship between the two of them. It was more, this is a guy who's helping me do this thing.
Right. Yeah. It's like it seems sort of hamstrung to me, and I didn't. So I don't really like him in those movies in that role.
Which is quite different than Anthony Mackie's relationship with Evans.
Captain America. Right.
Captain America. They have the bromance now.
Yeah, they do have the bromance.
And it's really good.
Yes, it works. It totally works.
With as a Falcon, I'm happy for Anthony Mackie too. I'm going to say on this briefly, is because he wanted to get into the Marvel comic movies somewhere, somehow. He was hoping it would be Black Panther, but he didn't get that. He got in there as a Falcon. He was extremely happy because he had talked about in different interviews. He said, man, I want to be a superhero. And he said, preferably in a Marvel movie. And it was so funny when his wish came true. It wasn't the character he thought, but he still got the character that was a good character, being the sidekick of Captain America. So he's pretty stoked.
That worked.
Yeah.
Before we move off of Don Cheadle, I do have one honorable mention.
Sure.
Of a really good film that he was in that probably anyone has heard of. It's called The Guard.
Yeah, the British, the UK movie.
Yes, well, I think it was Irish, but yeah.
I think
made in 2011.
Yeah.
And very, very well done movie. Very well done.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm a fan of Brandon Gleeson. So
He
I
was
want
excellent.
so I want to see the movie. I also want to see Calvary with Brandon Gleeson. I think that's going to be pretty good movie. But I like him because he was in Troy. What else was he? He was in the Bruges. He's just a really good actor,
He's a very good actor.
and I've seen him
But
in some small parts. But I will. I'm gonna try to get to see that because I thought I heard somebody say that Don Cheadle was good in that film.
he was very good. And just for those who may be watching, just to give them an idea of what this movie is about. Um, it's about an unorthodox Irish policeman who has a very difficult personality. He's very conflict, happy, I guess. And he's partnered with an uptight FBI agent who Don Cheadle plays. And Don Cheadle flies over to Ireland to investigate this international drug smuggling ring and ends up partnering with Brendan Gleeson's guard. And Brendan Gleeson's basically a security guard or kind of a guard and not supposed to be involved in this investigation at all, but he gets involved. And it's very well done in a way that British movies do, that American movies miss. The charm. I mean, there's just a charm, an element of charm and whimsy and just genuine enjoyment of a good story that I think permeates a number of movies, at least the imports that make it from England, Ireland, whatever, Wales, whatever, that area, at least the imports that make it over to America, they have that. And I think our movies, for all the bluster, the money, the 900-pound gorilla in the room, characterness of our movies, we miss that. A lot of our movies just miss it. And I think it's because American movies are too hung up on casting the best looking man or woman for the role and not the best actor for the role. And they have very narrow constricts on what's castable in the American movie industry, really hamstrings the creativity and the ability to tell a story. And the Brits don't have those hangups. So you'll see women of all ages in interesting roles. You'll see men of all ages in interesting roles. I mean, Brendan Gleeson was the star of this movie, and he would be a star of a movie in America. Too old, too fat, too boring, too whatever, all the twos that make no difference when you're talking about a good story. And that's one reason why I really like at least a lot of the imports that make it over from the British Isles. They enjoy a good story, and you can tell. So that's one reason. And this is a very good story. It's really well done.
Well, so I'm looking forward to seeing that, by the way. My honorable mention is going to be Brooklyn's Finest.
Yes.
Don Cheadle plays an undercover police officer in the midst of gang and drug violence with, and I think Wesley Snipes is in this movie too. But I know one of your favorite actors, Richard Gere, is in this film, and Ethan Hawke. So it's a pretty decent movie. So that's my special mention. So let's go to Tom Hanks real quick. Favorite two movies for Tom Hanks?
Favorite two movies for Tom Hanks.
I mean, it's easy for me. He has a few, in my opinion, but well, while you're thinking about it, I'm gonna just throw mine
Yeah,
in.
let me
Is
think
that
about
okay?
it.
One
Yeah,
of
go on ahead.
one of my favorite movies for Tom Hanks is Saving Private Ryan. This is a World
Okay.
War II war-based film, and there's three reasons why I like this film. One's personal, and the other two have to do with the film in general. It is obviously a war scenario. It's World War II. The reason why they have to save Private Ryan, and Tom Hanks's character is tasked to do this by the United States government. Tom Hanks is a captain in the United States Army, and he is tasked to find Private Ryan because back during World War II, there were so many people either joining or, I should say, enlisting into the Army, or being drafted into the Army. Draft was really big during World War II, and so that meant you could be drafted, which means family members from same families, siblings, would go into the service. When you had so many siblings going into the service at the same time, what the government was trying to do, especially when they knew that certain families were actually going to be facing the front, or in heavy combat, they needed to try to find uh, a relative if so many relatives had already been reported killed. So to keep the family line lifeline relevant. In this case, Private Ryan's brothers had all been killed except for him. And so they were trying to find him so he could come back and save his family's lifeline, or, I'm probably not saying it correctly, but lineage, by bringing him back. And so Tom Hanks is tasked to do this with a small group of men trying to get through the front, through all these enemy areas to try to find this kid. And that's what the premise of the movie is about. And it's a really good movie. The other movie that I thought was really good, Michael Duncan was in this film. This is The Green Mile. I really enjoyed that film, probably too much because of all the craziness and the horror of the film in my mind. But it was a very well done film, and that's a really good movie for Tom Hanks. I know a lot of people would have thought Forrest Gump, which is a really good film too. But those two are films that I've gone back to see more often than not. And just piggybacking off of Tom Hanks' involvement in Saving Private Ryan, Tom Hanks, I think it was with Spielberg, co-produced a TV series called, well, they did two. The first one was Band of Brothers, and then they got back together for the Pacific, and these were miniseries, made for television miniseries. And Tom Hanks was the executive producer on both those films and both those miniseries. And I've seen Band of Brothers 3 times, and it is long to sit through all those episodes. It was so worth it. And then Pacific, I've seen it once, and it was good. It wasn't as good to me as Band of Brothers, but it was very good nevertheless. Both of them had 10 episodes. So really, really, really good, but about World War II. And Saving Private Ryan just was also really, really done really well. So those are my two for Tom Hanks. What about you, Karen?
Well, my two, one is just about a 30-year-old movie. It's 29 years old, called Nothing in Common. Jackie Gleason was in this movie, and I think it was his last. It may have been his last film, or very close to his last film before he died. Even Marie Saint was in this movie, as well as Hector Elizondo.
Oh, I love him.
Yeah, And basically, you know, this is a movie that I think has definitely has resonance today. You've got, you know, a young advertising executive who's just, you know, basically a real go-getter. And then his father, played by Jackie Gleason, you know, is having like major health issues. And Tom Hanks's character is faced with, you know, how do I deal with this father and keep my own life going at the same time? And the father and the son are not close. I mean, they barely speak. But somehow, you know, they have to forge a relationship in the movie, or do they? I think that's the question that the movie poses. At what cost do we chase our own personal dreams, you know, when family gets in the way? Really interesting. And, you know, like I said, with themes that still resonate today, or even more today than maybe they did in 1986. Very, very well acted by both Tom Hanks and Jackie Gleason. Cela Ward was also in this movie, and she was really good as a possible girlfriend for Tom Hanks. Just very, very well done. Really, really like this movie a lot. My second movie would be Apollo 13.
Wow, that was good, Phil.
Houston, we have a problem.
We have a problem. Right? That's a good one. That's a good one.
I love that movie. I can watch that movie again and again and again and again. I could never tire of watching that movie. And I know I was trying to tell you here that I have a thing. Well, I think I did say I have a thing about men in uniform in movies, swashbucklers, pirates, military men, naval men, Air Force men, Army men, whatever. So this one, I mean, they're in space, so they're in uniform. So there you go. That's already a win. And Tom Hanks is the anchor in this movie, not only as in real life as the star of the movie, but also within the story. He plays Jim Lovell, who is the captain of the Apollo 13 crew and needs to hold things together when things go horribly wrong. We now know they did. They almost did not make it back. Right. They literally almost did not make it back. And I'm old enough to remember Apollo 13 when it went up, but I mean, I was a kid, so I was kind of, you know, checking in and checking out and not really focused on it. But at one point it became really, you kept hearing about it because apparently not everything was going well. Right. And then things turned out okay. I think this is one. I don't always like Ron Howard's movies. I hate what he did with The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, for example, but that's another story. But I loved what he did with this movie. The research, the detail, the things that they captured, and the immense amount of work it must have taken to work with NASA and work with the mainly NASA to get the details right on this film. The special effects were incredibly well done. And also, this is a movie that could get boring really fast. I mean, you basically have three people stuck in a really small space for a long time. Sure. You really have to have some interesting dialogue and some interesting dynamics going on, or people are going to check out. You don't check out. It's riveting. And when this movie came out, and I went to see it when it came out in the movies.
So did I.
I remember Apollo 13. I knew exactly what happened. I knew the whole story, and I'm still on the edge of my seat. That's a good movie.
That is a good movie.
That's a good movie.
Good acting.
Very
Good
well.
movie.
And Tom Hanks did an excellent job, but so did Bill Paxton, so did Kevin Bacon,
Kevin Bacon. Yep.
so did Gary Sinise, so did Ed Harris. I loved Ed Harris as the leader of the Houston crew, who had to keep thinking of things, some kind of way to get these men back home. Him and in the white vest that his wife made him for every space launch. So yeah, excellent.
Like all those actors too, by the way.
Yes, so do I.
They're good. Well, my sleeper movie, honorable mention. It's just a little quirky. Obviously I like the word quirky. It's a little quirky movie with Tom Hanks and Julia Roberts. It's called Larry Crown.
That is a quirky movie.
It's a quirky movie.
I don't think I've even heard of that one.
It's a quirky movie, and it's not like it's humongous in any realms. Nobody's going to win an Academy Award. No one's even going to be nominated. But it was a fun movie, and it was a movie that talked about humanity. It's just people being human in their quirkiness, and that's what the movie was. It wasn't anything more than that, but it was fun. It seemed like it was fun to make, and it was fun to watch. And there's little cameos from different people in the film that only have a few speaking parts, but the relationship between Tom Hanks and Julia Roberts is really fun. So I would check that out, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody listening in, check out Larry Crown. It's actually a decent movie. Not a humongous, like I said, it's not Oscar worthy, but it's worth watching.
Well, I have an honorable mention.
Da-da-da.
Well, a
Drum
couple
roll.
of them really.
What?
My honorable mention will be Punchline.
Oh, with that was with Sally Fields, right?
That would be correct.
Where she's trying to be a stand-up comedian.
She's trying to be a stand-up comedian,
and
Tom Hanks is a stand-up comedian in this movie. And this had to have been a really hard movie to make. I know it was for her, but him too. And I can remember when this movie came out, because they really had to learn stand-up comedy. They really had to learn how to do stand-up comedy in front of like an actual audience to pull this movie off. And you can tell that they put that kind of work into it. They were not just relying on formulas or canned responses or anything like that. They were working those jokes. And it was John Goodman was in this movie. He played Sally Fields' husband. A very understanding husband. So again, this movie was full of good actors, and it was really well done. And I think it's one of the best movies about stand-up comedians, about that art form, that still today, I'm hard-pressed to think of a better movie than Punchline when dealing with that particular subject matter.
Very good. That's a good one. That is a good one. Well, why don't we talk about Jude Law real quick? Now, I'm going to jump in again. Now, I'm a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, as you well know.
Yes.
And I really like the relationship between Jude Law and Robert Downey Jr. Here we are talking about someone else with Robert Downey Jr. having a bromance. I think these two have a bromance in the original film Sherlock Holmes, and also Sherlock Holmes: The Game of Shadows. So I'm really a fan. However, these are not the movies that I'm talking about. The two movies that I wanted to bring up, you'll like one of them for sure, because you, as you alluded to earlier, you're a big fan of Men in Uniform. Enemy at the Gates. I really enjoyed that film. I really enjoyed Jude Law's characterization in the film, and it is based on a true story. Now, the second movie, a lot of people don't seem to have seen this movie for some reason, and I actually liked the movie. Not a huge fan of one of the actresses in it, but not that I don't dislike her, I'm just not a huge fan. That's Nicole Kidman. I'm not a big fan of Nicole Kidman, but I'm not against Nicole Kidman. She's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Although I like Renee Zellweger better, and she's also in the film, but with a smaller role. But the film that I liked with Jude Law is called Cold Mountain.
Yes, I remember that film.
And here's another film with a guy in a uniform because he was a Confederate soldier.
Yep.
In this film. But this is one of those films where I think you get, at least I did, I got involved in trying to will this guy back to see this woman that he loved so much and got to spend so little time with. And it was more as a cerebral love than anything else. And yet the two of them both fighting through every inch of themselves to be reunited in this film. And you're almost willing yourself, trying to put your mind into getting Jude Law's character to see his wife, Nicole Kidman, in this film after the post-Civil War. And it just gives you an idea of what it probably took a lot of men and women of the time trying to get back together, because at that point, it takes a long time to get cross country. There were no cars. This is horseback or foot, or a wagon train technically, during this era. So if you're living in Virginia and you're fighting in Atlanta, that's a long way. It doesn't seem that way now because you have cars, trains, boats, planes. But back then, you're talking about months on end to get it from one part of the country to the next. And so you're willing these two to try to get together at the latter part of this film. I thought it was really well done, and I thought Jude Law did a wonderful job in that. And going back to Enemy at the Gate, I really liked his characterization in that film too.
Interesting. Very good. My two films, one is Wilde. It's a 1997 film about Oscar Wilde, the trial of Oscar Wilde. And Jude Law played an erstwhile lover of Oscar Wilde, Rich Paramore, who did him wrong, basically. Very well done, and way different than other characters he's played before since. And the story of Oscar Wilde is well known, the trial that he had to go through, basically for being gay. And Jude Law played Lord Alfred Douglas. Who, of course, had everything. If it, looked like he was involved with Oscar Wilde, so again, based on true events, right. Not completely, but very interesting to watch. And there was certainly a lot of chemistry between the person who played Oscar Wilde, and I want to say that was Stephen Fry, who played Oscar Wilde. And let's see. Yes, it was Stephen Fry who played Oscar Wilde, and Jude Law played the person that he was involved with. So, and it was very well done. I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely worth watching if you get a chance to see that. My other all-time favorite movie with Jude Law is The Talented Mr. Ripley. That movie was done in 1999. So 16-year-old movie. He played Dickie Greenleaf, a spoiled rich guy who kind of absconded off to Italy because he just didn't buckle down and deal with the family business or take his rightful place in being like a good boy, being a responsible citizen. So he's like, screw that. I'm a trust fund baby. I'm going off to Venice. I'm just going to hang out and I'm just going to live in Italy and spend money and just have fun. Right. And Matt Damon also stars in this movie, along with Gwyneth Paltrow. Matt Damon is this really smarmy guy, and he really does a very good job in this movie. But he sort of is tapped to go and find Dickie by the Greenleaf family, and they're like, I don't know, shipping magnates or something like that. They have a lot of money for days. But they tap Matt Damon for some bizarre reason and ask him to go and find Dickie and bring him back. And Matt Damon decides to sort of just worm his way into Dickie Greenleaf's life with disastrous results. Right. So it's really Matt Damon's film because he plays by far the most complex character, in my opinion. But you really have to be, I think, a good actor to hold your own against somebody who's doing all of this sort of complex, psychological work. And This is a psychological thriller, Right. And, so it's very easy to forget a Dickie Greenleaf type character who's sort of, outside of just being like spoiled and rich, can be kind of bland unless you play it right. And Jude Law played it right. He made Dickie Greenleaf kind of a rogue, but engaging, and selfish, but charming, and sort of, extremely self-centered, but also, but also at the same time, sort of considerate and romantic and sweet and nice and fun. And, so he brought all of these different characteristics to what could have been kind of a character that just could have died in the presence of Matt Damon's tour de force of Mr. Ripley. So Good job.
Now, I wanted to mention, you had mentioned Stephen Fry earlier. Stephen Fry also makes an appearance as Sherlock Holmes' brother in the two aforementioned films, Sherlock Holmes and Sherlock Holmes, The Game of Shadows. So they team up with him again.
Wow.
Or I should say, Jude Law teams up with him again. Now, any other movies of Jude Law's that is your honorable mention film?
Don't have an honorable mention. Those are my two.
Okay, so I'm going to go with a remake. Not so much for the main character as much as it was for Jude Law's part in the film. And the original movie was pretty good. The remake was okay. Not as good as the original movie by far, but not a bad remake for modern days. And this is the role that Jude Law played, which is Jack Burden, which is the character in All the King's Men.
Oh.
He played opposite Sean Penn in the film. Now, the original movie, All the King's Men, came out in the late 40s, which was a better film, I think.
Yes.
With Broderick
It
Crawford.
Was a better film.
Yeah, with Broderick
It was a better
Crawford.
film, definitely.
With Broderick Crawford.
And one of my favorite films.
Right, but here's the thing: in both films, to me, because it is a pivotal role in both films. The Jack Burden in the original film was John Ireland, which I really like him as an actor, and then Jude Law did equally as good, I thought, in the more modern version of All the King's Men. Even though it wasn't as good a film, the Jack Burden characters in both films were really good.
I picked that as my honorable mention too.
Yeah, it's a good film.
I'll just take your honorable mention.
There's nothing wrong with piggybacking. That's nothing wrong with that. Now,
Awesome.
My other film, and I'm jumping back to John Ireland real quick because I like him as an actor. He was one of my favorite cowboy actors. A really, 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 really good film. And it doesn't matter if you're a John Wayne fan or not, because John Wayne, even though he's in the film, he's not really the main character of the film. the main character of the film, in which John Ireland is in. I'm trying to find the name of the movie. I can't think of the name of the movie. What's the name of the movie? It's a John Wayne movie. What is the name of this movie? Oh my goodness. Red River? Red River. That's the name of it. Just came to my mind. Okay, so John Ireland plays a gunslinger in Red River and he's up against, not up against, he and another gunfighter are trying to force their wills, we'll say. They're having a war of the wills before they actually have the actual gunfight per se. And do you know who the other actor is?
No.
Montgomery Clift.
Oh, I love Montgomery Clift.
I know. in Red River, Montgomery Clift plays a character who John Wayne's character has taken under his wing after a devastating Indian attack on a wagon train. And he raises him, John Wayne's character raises Montgomery Clift's character as if it was his son, and ends up being his partner in the cattle drives. And so later in the film, John Ireland and Montgomery Clift have actually, it's like they're going back and forth whether they're going to fight each other in a gunfight or not while they're going on this trail, because John Ireland's hired on as another one of the cowpokes who are trying to get the cattle across country.
Right.
But I always liked John Ireland in these cowboy movies, but I thought he did a really good job in all the Kingsmen.
Agree.
That was just my little segue there.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, and of course I've always loved Broderick Crawford. Pretty much almost everything he's in. Quite a fine actor.
Me too.
Cool. See, that's good. Because those are good movies.
Excellent.
Suave. Well, I guess we satiated talking about those four gentlemen. Denzel Washington, of course, and Don Cheadle, Tom Hanks, and Jude Law. Wonderful.
I think we should call it. I think we should wrap it up, Greg.
I think we should too. Oh, I have one more movie which I thought was interesting that people should see. It's a modernistic film starring Jude Law, and it's Jude Law and opposite Forrest Whitaker. And the name of this film is Repo Men. Don't get it confused with Repo Man. This is Repo Men. It's a very interesting film. 2010, I think.
Yes, you're right.
Something like that. 2010.
It's 2010.
Yeah. And it's a very interesting film because you're watching this film. It's bizarre in its essence anyway, and the ending is really a shocker. At least it was for me.
Okay.
So give it a shot. It's a decent film.
Okay. Yeah, sci-fi.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Definitely sci-fi. Our associate Pebbles would love this film probably.
Yes.
Because of her sci-fi nature. So,
right.
But yeah, that's a good one. Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening to A Real Point of View here on Hangouts on Air. If you like to listen to this again and get some really good film ideas, check us out on our YouTube channel under A Real Point of View. And we'll be back here next week with another episode of our show. So we'd love to hear your comments. So give us a shot. You can send comments to me at A Real Movie Guy on Twitter, and also to Karen D on at KD Movie Maven on Twitter. And you can also send comments to us through YouTube and latterly, which is not a real term, also at our Facebook page under Real Point of View. So thanks again to everybody out there for listening, and join us next week for more information on film. And I appreciate you, Karen. Hopefully we can get Larry to hang out with us next time.
Yeah.
And you have a good night, and I'll see you at the movies too.
I'll see you at the movies.
No, I'll see you at the movies first. Because
Whatever.
I'll be looking for you because I know you'll be in row 17, seat 4.
Yeah, okay.
Take care, Karen.
Take care.
Ciao.